DeShaun Foster is just a little bit tone deaf to say UCLA's close. The Bruins, they're not close at all.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. It's your team every day. Welcome back, everydayers. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season's around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. What we're talking about is how tone deaf is DeShaun Foster saying out loud, we're close. We're going to debate that. Segment 2, we'll dive into, can UCLA, under DeShaun Foster, actually get close? Close to what? We'll talk about that segment 2. And then segment 3, what do I need to see for UCLA against UNLV to have some sort of hope for the rest of the season? All right, for the Bruins, you come out of a drubbing against Utah. And you're like, all right, you're going to have all the national scrutiny because of Nico coming out. Embarrassments, disappointments. Does anybody even care? All those thoughts are coming out right now. And then a couple days die down, and you watch North Carolina with arguably one of the greatest NFL coaches of all time, Bill Belichick, get humiliated by, I think, a team that probably isn't as good as Utah and TCU on their home field as well, by more points than UCLA did to Utah. TCU throttled North Carolina. But you know what the problem is? In setting the national limelight, laugh at Bill, which everybody is. They certainly are. You come out, as DeShaun Foster did, to the first comment he made to the questions in his practice presser on a Tuesday was, we're close. The first thing he says is, we're close. When everybody's already laughing at us, everybody's laughing at themselves. We as a UCLA fan base are already pretty self-loathing as it is. It's a tough to be a Bruin. Even DeShaun Foster quoted that. It was a tough night to be a Bruin. Yeah. So the first thing you probably shouldn't say is we're close, because clearly it's not. The idea that it's fixable it's tough to kind of go, we're close. It's fixable and then get waxed like they did versus Utah. All right. Utah has to be a clear top team. And the thing is, UCLA, as much as they took a drubbing against Indiana last year, I still don't even think that Indiana drubbing was as bad as this one. I don't think there was any game that was truly as bad as the waxing UCLA took versus Utah. Like absolute beatdown. You're down 20-0 before you can even blink. Now, there are some different throws they could have made, some schematic changes that maybe a drive or two earlier defensively where they didn't look as awful. But still, Utah ended in the end zone, all right? There's nothing stopping the fact that Utah ran it right down their throats, said, all right, our O-line is much beefier, much bigger, much better, and just ran it right to UCLA, had their mobile quarterback running around and embarrassed UCLA, all while nobody was in the Rose Bowl, all right? The continual talk, 35,000, more red than there was blue. Frustration galore, all right? Here's the problem of what DeShaun Foster says. Even if he's right, and he might be, if we live in that world for a second, just live with it with me for a second. Even if he's right, that is not the first thing anybody wants to hear, all right? Now, DeShaun Foster could be probably one of the nicer coaches, even cutting off reporters and accidentally saying, I'm sorry, cool. But the problem is what everybody does not want to hear is we're close. Even if we're right, there's a better way to say, dang it, like bring it, like it falls on me as a coach, all these things. That's not what I heard in that practice presser leading into UNLV week. All right, we're close. Are you kidding me? Utah just ran for nearly 300 yards on UCLA's defense week 1. UCLA's offense, with the new prize recruit in Nico Iamaleava, Nico himself could only account for almost 180 plus yards of offense? Like, honestly, not like he ran for 180 yards. No, throwing and him rushing only accounted for 180 yards of offense for a team that accumulated 220 yards of offense to Utah's nearly 500. All right? Utah ran the ball for more yards than UCLA had total yards in that game Saturday night. They still forced a pick. UCLA was horrible on third downs, both offensively and defensively. Total yards per play, Utah is basically averaging a first down every 2 plays. Pressure in the backfield. UCLA's potential for a sack, none. Couldn't do anything. Couldn't get pressure, and the players were missing tackles so poorly that it was embarrassing, all right? It's like me out there trying to miss a tackle. Yes, now Dampier has a great ability to maneuver in the backfield, in the pocket, in and out, avoid a tackle. Cool. Some of those points are valid from DeShaun Foster. But unfortunately, there's already an angry storm cloud above every UCLA fan base, every part of the fan base, every alumni, donor, supporter, fan, parent, recruit. You watch that, you bring them to the Rose Bowl, and you're like, I see a tarp, and it's raining on the field, but it certainly ain't raining like a parade in the stands. Like, what are we doing? Like, what is going on there with DeShaun Foster coming out and saying that? Because even if he's right, that is not what anybody wants to hear. Clearly, the wrong message being sent. All right? Because if you dig in, I saw that typed up by various outlets, and I was like, wait, we're close? Like, that's what they're saying? And I watched the entire presser, like you can all do that on the UCLA Athletics page. And I'm like, maybe there's context, right? Because a lot of times people can, everybody can take a quote out of context. He comes out and says, we're close. That's the first thing he says. It's fixable. You mean it's fixable to get pushed around by offensive linemen, not getting any pass protection for Nico? Or it's like, yeah, he's an athlete. He can go and make plays, and I just want him to slide more. What about better reads? What about staying in the pocket? What about keeping him upright, not forcing him to extend plays every other play, if not every play, for UCLA offensively, which is the only reason at times UCLA was able to run the ball. Now, I have my more positive mindset on the offensive side because there was growth from 24 to 25, clear growth. It's just embarrassing that the last 2 home openers, you think about it, Indiana and Utah, you have teams that are powerful opponents. One, in terms of a legacy like Indiana, that does not have any football legacy. Utah, clearly a down year in 24, but came out wanting to send a message in 25. And DeShaun Foster trying to parry off this little arrogance. All right, we're going to close practice. We're going to do all this arrogance and come out and be like, all right, we're close. When clearly what we all watched was something different. All right. Now you could say one side of the football is closer to fixable things like offensively. There is reason to believe UCLA could still do something on offense because not a lot of teams are going to possess the power that Utah has on their defense. Now, defensively, if you're trying to say missed tackling, all that's going to get shored up from week 1 to week 2. DeShaun Foster went on to say in his presser, yeah, you're going to see the biggest growth from this team week 1 to week 2. Okay, we better, because UNLV is running the ball with reckless abandon against 2 terrible teams, Idaho State and Sam Houston State. But if UCLA gives up a lot of rushing yards on defense, where's that growth? It can't just be on one side of the football, right? Special teams, offense, defense. You can't just grow and go put up a bunch of points against a bad UNLV defense and consider it a full-scale growth, all right? And that's where all the cries are coming out and saying DeShaun Foster's not right for the job. Why everybody's going to yell at the job for the AD and why this hiring process, after the lack of firing from Chip Kelly in 2023, was done so poorly that now we're going to put this all on Nico. No. I do think Nico and the offense are closer to popping off. But is that happening now? Or is it going to happen in the second half of the season like UCLA started to figure things out against a much easier part of the schedule in 2024? That's not what UCLA has in 2025. There is reason to believe that they could do something good, but does it end in wins, program progressing forward, and actual belief from the fan base as a whole? I'm going to talk about that next. Is it realistic to believe what DeShaun Foster's saying? Is he right or is he not? Or in what world could it be right? Let's talk about that next on Locked On UCLA. Well, the opening whistle blows on a new repair. Get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. If you need parts fast for a project, Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. Join the free Trade Master program today and some serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated phone line, dedicated support line. Check that out. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free. Use the promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. All right, guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiette Ready. Rougiette Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rougiette's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast on average in 15 minutes. These effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment works and when it's right. And what you can love is that it's completely online. Rougiette connects with you to a board-certified doctor and ships your treatment discreetly to your door. So head to rougiette.com/lockedoncollege. Use the code lockedoncollege to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/lockedoncollege and use the promo code lockedoncollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rougiette website for full safety information. Cruising on here, second segment. Can UCLA actually get close? Are they actually close in this game? All right, so we're going to talk about that right now. You could argue UCLA's schedule gets a lot easier over these next few weeks, but the problem is, how close does it take? How close can UCLA get under DeShaun Foster? And realistically, the only way I think the Bruins can get anywhere near respectability with the fan base that's been as apathetic as it's ever been for UCLA from the end of Chip Kelly into the DeShaun Foster hiring. You've got UNLV on the road. You've got what looks to be an even scrappier New Mexico team than initially thought, considering they went to Michigan and gave them all they could handle. On the road at Northwestern, you play host to a top 2, top 3, top 4, whatever they'll be at the time, Penn State team come early October. And then UCLA plays Michigan State on the road versus Maryland on October 18th. And that is UCLA's first 6 games. First 6 to 7 games, if I'm doing my math right. 7 games, all right? The best thing UCLA could do is go 5-2. That's including a loss to Penn State and somehow solving all the issues against UNLV. Maybe not solving them all, but winning. And then you beat New Mexico. All right, those are things that are somewhat expected. Now a little bit scary after the way they performed against Utah. You play Northwestern. Kind of heading into the season, you could chalk up Northwestern like a game that we viewed, Maryland earlier this year, like last year, how it was as a UCLA fan viewing the Rutgers games or whatever it might have been. That's a game I expect as a UCLA program to go in and win at Northwestern. Is that realistic? I'm not sure just at this moment. Now, when Penn State comes to town, sometimes the biggest moments in college football are hosting a top 3, top 4 opponent in all of college football and having a close game on prime time in front of a packed Rose Bowl, not an empty Rose Bowl, but a packed Rose Bowl, or something that looks respectful to the fans, to the team, and the program as a whole, and performing adequately, where it's like you go to the very end and you lose heartbreakingly, or you perform well and then Penn State pulls away, or maybe you do something like Vandy did last year, which was upset Alabama, storm the field, which we've never really seen in anything for UCLA, anything that can provide a jolt. All right, I'm not going to chalk that up as an opportunity, but a close game against a top-tier opponent where the crowd's into it is something we're all hoping for. We're hoping at just the very chance to get our heart broken. We're not even there. It's a sullen vibe at this very moment. And then UCLA goes to Michigan State, a game that I thought the Bruins can and still very well can compete in. But can you really believe that UCLA, after a late night Pacific time kickoff, is going to wake up on a Saturday morning, quick turnaround to Michigan State and win in East Lansing? By the time that quarterback's had now almost 2.5 seasons to prepare, Aiden Childs for Jonathan Smith, or a Maryland team that went out slinging the ball with their true freshman Malik Washington? Goodness. UCLA to earn any type of we're close, all right. When everybody says hindsight's 2020. Well, they have to go 5-2 for DeShaun Foster's statement of we're close to even be viable. 5-2. That includes winning all these other games that are toss-ups and also playing something close against Penn State, right? A 14-point game where maybe UCLA leads early or keeps it close and Penn State puts one in late and wins by 10 to 14 points, right? That is what we're close means, not a 33-point drubbing at home on opening night when everybody's laughing at Nico, laughing at the program, and nobody's there to support. That's not what we're close is. It's a whole encompassing statement, not a fact that maybe a week of practice is going to change anything. But to make it we're close, you need the Rose Bowl to be energized for the Penn State game. Because Lord knows that when some of these other teams, namely Nebraska, comes in, there will be a lot of fans. And when Penn State comes in, probably a lot of fans coming in from State College to cheer on their team. I don't want tarps. I don't want a stadium full of tarps when these teams come in. But we're close to being in a very bleak outlook right now. Can UCLA come in 5-2? There's a world where it happens. A world where realistically UCLA can turn things around. And here's the only thing for what DeShaun Foster was come to say. We saw this last year. UCLA not playing that well against these teams. A lot of travel, a lot of turnover, uncertainty for a program where a year ago, the players in the offseason, when they were looking for a head coach that late in the offseason, were saying, hey, get our man Coach DeShaun Foster, get our man Coach Foss, bring in the Foss era, usher it in. And lo and behold, they listened to what some of the players were clamoring on for social media. And DeShaun Foster, despite a poor start, the players bought in. Despite players transferring out, they bought in, came in, and turned it around. And we had a good back end of the season. In the last 6 games, UCLA is 4-2. The hope was that would continue. Instead, we got Indiana Part 2, which was way more embarrassing, way worse. And maybe not on a bigger scale because this game was at 8 p.m. Pacific. Still, even more embarrassing. You could argue the 2 most embarrassing performances of the weekends, 3, if you include Alabama losing to Florida State on the road, UCLA versus Utah at home, North Carolina versus TCU at home, and then Alabama on the road at Florida State, all right? Now, the loud jeers and craziness is all going to go for Kalen DeBoer's job. The success that Bill Belichick has come through is going to lead to a lot more scrutiny, and obviously with the other stuff, it's going to lead to more eyeballs that way. Then you've got UCLA where it's like, man, they brought in Nico. They got this prize new offensive threat, super athlete at QB, a new young and up-and-coming offensive coordinator. They play in the most iconic college football venue in all the sport has to offer in the Rose Bowl. And yet it's like, that's how embarrassing it was. Of the top 3 most embarrassing performances of the weekend, UCLA was there. And to get close, you're going to have to – it's like when you have a meal and you're picky about something. I'm a picky eater, so if you put pickles on my burger or my chicken sandwich or near my fries and it's just soaking the fry, I'm going to freak out. I don't like it. Maybe you hate me that I don't like pickles or anything like that. It just ruins the fry. It ruins the burger. It ruins the bun. It ruins the taste, right? So for us as a UCLA fan, what's that picky thing for you that's going to negate this horrific taste that week 1 is left for us in our fandom in week 1? 5-2, is that going to cut it? If they're barely getting by the Rebels, the Lobos, the Northwesterns of the world, the Nittany Lions, Michigan State, is that really going to cut it? It can. You get a lot of momentum, swing it that way. And as DeShaun Foster proved, even when his team was down and out, as low as it was last year, they still fought hard, played together, played for him, and turned it around after the mid-season mark. Now, these are a bunch of guys he's brought in and don't have that UCLA kind of blood in them. They don't have the ties to DeShaun Foster being there for their 3, 4, 5-year careers, for some of those being COVID seniors. It's a little different. He's brought in new guys, new voices, new coaches, new players. Will they have that same dig it in, grind it out mentality to recover after a week 1 blowout? DeShaun Foster, his track record says he might. But is the fan base willing to be patient enough to wait 6 weeks for that to happen, to say we've moved forward with another 6-6 season, getting blown out by teams we hope to be relatively close to? DeShaun Foster says we're close. Do we believe it? No. Can they be? It takes a lot for me to enjoy a burger if there's been pickles left on it. Still a disgusting taste. Sometimes I'm like, all right, that was fine. And we could still get to that point in the 25 season. But it's going to take something super saucy, super spicy, super out of the ordinary for us to really relinquish that taste, get that out of our mouths sooner than like week 5. What's it going to take? We'll find out. But what I do want to see is a lot of improvements in the UNLV game. You can go over a laundry list. Here's what I want to see next versus the Rebels of UNLV. The NFL season is almost here, and the FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. To love using FanDuel, there's reasons like however you like to bet, there's player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now, and by visiting FanDuel.com, get started. Use FanDuel.com to place that first $5 bet, and if you win, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. So go check it out right now. That's right, college football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting tickets can feel more like a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's easiest to find ways to score the last-minute tickets, best prices, no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. And I've done it to you to use it for trips for big games in California, to go see big games across the country. Game Time is where it's at for me, and that's where it should be for you. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create the account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, the promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Locked On College. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. So this is what I want to see from UCLA. All right. First, we're going to start with the offensive side of the ball, because I think it's going to take a lot more than 1 week or even the whole season to maybe fix what we saw from the defensive side of things in week 1. All right. UNLV runs the ball. Cool. What UCLA needs to do is win the toss, not defer the choice to the second half. Take the rock and score. Like, put out a strong drive. If your defense is not up to the challenge of stopping UNLV, they have put up a whole lot of points week 1, week 0 and week 1 in their first 2 games of the year. They had played 2 games before UCLA stepped onto the field to embarrass themselves in the Rose Bowl Saturday night. So you best know UNLV had a couple of wins. They've got something building under Dan Mullen. And then next thing you know, they're sitting watching that UCLA debacle on Saturday night. Stayed up. Maybe they fell asleep laughing. I don't know. But the way the Bruins can get that last laugh back against this new UNLV squad, right? Because their old coach is now at Purdue. Dan Mullen has quite the pedigree, and I think it's going to take him a lot to overhaul his defense. So the first thing is Nico and UCLA needs to have at least 400 yards of offense. Like this, yeah, I am going bold. This is what I need to see. What will happen and what I need to see are going to maybe be 2 different things. Maybe they're one and the same. UCLA gets a team in UNLV that has given up a lot of points. They forced turnovers. So this would be a true test to see if Nico can deliver strikes down the field, hit his open receivers in traffic for a ball hawk UNLV defense. They've been able to turn over teams in both games and still gave up a lot of yards and a lot of points. So the Bruins have to, of course, avoid turnovers more so than they did on Saturday night. Only one late game pick from Nico, and then move the ball 400 yards and at least like 4 touchdowns and a field goal, right? I'm thinking you have to crack the 30-point barrier with a lot of yards and assert your authority for a team that's allowed their opponents at times to move the ball at will. Idaho State had almost 500 yards of offense. Idaho State, week 1, their second game of the year, went to Southern Utah and lost by almost 30 points. So they went and almost beat UNLV week 1. And then week 2 went to an FCS program, which is usually one of the worst. I can't say what Southern Utah is now. I did go check with my Southern Utah source to see if they're any good. And Southern Utah's like, yeah, we're decent this year. Cool, that's what they're going to say. But in Cedar City, they're usually not watching good college football, especially if it's Idaho State and Southern Utah. All right? So then Idaho State goes from close game against UNLV and then gets waxed at the FCS level the next week. And even though UNLV won their second game, I'm still not high on the Sam Houston State team. That's still in their ongoing transition phase from FCS to the FBS level, because not everybody's James Madison with Kurt Signetti. That's not what Sam Houston State is. They're still getting off the ground and running. So UNLV, with much better coaching, better players off of successful seasons, a little easier to handle the coaching change when it's up-and-comer to one with the proven pedigree. It just doesn't have a defense yet, which is why UCLA should be able to put it in the end zone at least 4 times and maybe sprinkle in a couple of field goals with 1 turnover max. 2 turnovers, then UNLV has got a great defense at playing the ball, pinpointing, high-pointing the ball, and ripping away from UCLA receiving core that I'm hoping and should make a lot of plays. The other thing is you win the toss, go down and score. Put up a lot of numbers. Establish a running game against a defensive front that UCLA should be able to have their way with. Maybe not manhandle, not completely dominate, but when Tino Sunseri is dialing up a run, and the reasons for DeShaun Foster, when he was saying, yeah, we got to get away from the run game because we're down so much, well, utilize it. This is a game where you have to utilize it and prove that against the worst teams in the country, you can run the ball. Because there are times in the 2024 season when UCLA just could not run the ball. They could not do absolutely anything. They couldn't. No. They could not. And it looked even worse somehow on Saturday night. Somehow it looked worse. I just don't believe every team UCLA is going to face will have the same defensive front as Utah. The majority of the teams UCLA plays will not have that same defensive front. So if there's ever a chance to build momentum with the running backs in the room, get some pound and ground, ground and pound game going, just start running the rock, it would be against UNLV. And then you bring that into the New Mexico game week 3. All right. That is how UCLA can step. That's what I need to see. Defensively, I want UCLA to not go out and embarrass themselves. All right. Because this is very well the shootout that I was hoping UCLA would play to win against Utah week 1, because that was the only way the Bruins were going to win, is what we might see in week 2, where we might see a combined 70 points. We might see combined 65 plus points. Dare I say maybe 80 if the defenses are as bad as they've been between UNLV and UCLA. What I need to see from the defense, at least a sack or 2. Like, prove you can bring down a dual threat QB and force some turnovers. UCLA had a forced fumble and an unforced fumble, both there for the taking, and UCLA could not take advantage. You need to force a turnover. You need to build confidence in your defensive room that you can force turnovers. Because UCLA, as bad as they were the first parts of the season in 24, they still had a lot of turnovers and takeaways against Hawaii week 1 in a win. You go on a road against another Mountain West team that could still cough up the football. This is where the Bruins must come out and force a couple of turnovers. Special teams, I'd like to see a breakout return game. All right, this is the type of game where you're playing a group of 5. Other teams play FCS. That's not what UCLA is doing this year. You play a group of 5, and the Bruins come in and they break off a return. Maybe it's a kickoff return from Pleasant. Maybe we finally see Mikey Matthews go out there and return a punt. That would mean the defense is doing good things if they're forcing punts, so we can actually know what a punt return looks like and go make a return touchdown. Have a big game-changing special teams play that gets us excited that UCLA is growing as a whole unit. Offense, defense, special teams. I want to see all those things. I'm greedy, but I think in this game, to take that horrible taste from our mouths from week 1, you got to see a lot of growth or some growth in all these areas. Because DeShaun Foster is saying, hey, there's a bunch of little things that sucked from every one of our position groups in week 1. And if you're going to prove that UCLA is growing, we need to see a lot of little growth in every single area that was much better than week 1. It's a lot to ask to reverse course from a week 1 debacle. But against UNLV, there's possible reason to see it. Next, we will talk UCLA hoops with Chris Johnson. I'm going to talk all about what he thought potentially at the Rose Bowl, what McCronin can do without a big man, or the potential growth of Xavier Booker. We'll talk UCLA women's hoops, and we'll continue to talk Nico Iamaleava and the UCLA football saga all throughout this 25 season. So get your hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.